And we're back. um, this is the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. Um, it's one of the most important teachings that I have in my possession. And what I admire a lot about this book is the fact that it has a picture of Shenrezig, who is the Buddha of compassion. And I think that accurately describes what bodhisattvas are all about. They're pretty much like Buddhas on compassionate steroids. They are important for that fact, because that's the only thing that keeps them here in the world of suffering. That is their compassion. Because otherwise they would be liberated from suffering. They would be liberated from and put into enlightenment. They would become Buddhas. And they are Buddhas. They're enlightened. They're awakened. But they are still in the realm of suffering for one reason. Because they have an immense amount of compassion. And so, these 37 practices of bodhisattvas begin with an homage to Lokeshvara, which is Shenrezig's name in Sanskrit. So the homage to Shenrezig. I pay constant homage through my three doors to my supreme teacher and protector Shenrezig, who, while seeing all phenomena lack coming and going, makes single-minded effort for the living beings. Perfect Buddhas, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings, and this depends on knowing the practices. So I will explain the practices of bodhisattvas. Number 1. Having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly, night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. I will give about a sentence commentary on each one of these so that we can do them quickly. But let me turn on mute. Sorry about that. And what this is saying is that we should always think, listen, and meditate, always, in order to free ourselves. And actually, this reminds me of Marcus Aurelius, who says that is your nature to sleep? No, your nature is to work for your benefit and for the benefit of others. And so that's why I think that Buddhism and Stoicism have a lot in common. Number 2, attached to your loved ones, you're stored up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And quite simply, it's saying do not become attached, because all things are impermanent. 3. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Again, speaking on detachment, but not necessarily because of impermanence, but more because by becoming detached, you can focus your meditation. Number 4. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And this is actually part of a chapter entitled "Letting Go," and it's another detachment one, just like the other chapter before it, which was entitled "Leaving Home." But this chapter is specifically about letting go and detaching from objects. And so it says not to cling to your life, because someday you will die. Your consciousness, which is the guest, will leave the guest house, saying that your mind will one day part your body, and you shouldn't cling to this life. And that actually speaks a lot to me, because I'm actually afraid of death. I'm very much afraid of this thought of not feeling anything. And it's not necessarily that I'm scared about what's coming in the future after death, but I'm worried about, I'm worried about all my relations, and that's me clinging. That's my attachment, and I think everyone else feels that too. Number 5. When you keep their company, your 3 poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline. They make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And actually, this is something that I should learn to do. I should give up bad friends and discard them. And I think that is actually why a lot of people get into trouble. And they let these 3 poisons, which let me actually do momentary research on that. The 3 poisons. Just to explain it, because it was also in the soap too. 3 poisons. Desire, anger, and ignorance are the 3 poisons. And they're exemplified by a snake, snake, which is anger, a pig, which is ignorance, and a bird, which is desire. This next chapter is called Trusting. Just a moment. Number 6. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers, even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And I think that applies to even more than spiritual teachers. We get in our modern age, we get caught up on the idea of spiritual and spirituality and all that. And I think cherished teachers is a broad example that I think we should all read. Bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence, what worldly God can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the 3 jewels, which will not betray you. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And I think this actually speaks more to people who are theists, who believe in God or gods. And yes, you can trust, well, not necessarily trust, you can trust in a God to do good by you in this life. But you can't use that God for a higher spiritual purpose, because that God is still bound by the existence of suffering, by the realm of suffering. So, in that way, you can't necessarily trust that God, because if you want to get beyond this realm of suffering, and if you don't want to suffer at all, why trust in a God when he hasn't attained the end of suffering himself? This next chapter is called number 5, Commitment. So number 8, the subduer said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirth is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. That is to say that everything, it's karma, really. If you do wrong, you will reap wrong. And not only will that wrong come back to you, but it will also be in your mind. You will possibly regret it in the future. Number 9. Like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, pleasures of the 3 worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to the never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. That's pretty simple, and it goes along with commitment again, because you should commit yourself to the path and trying to rid yourself of this suffering. This next chapter is called is 6 wish-fulfilling jewels. Number 10. When your mothers, who've loved you long since time without beginning, are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So, mothers who have loved us since birth, and according to Buddhist and even before that, Brahmic theory of good relations, we've had the same mother for many, many times, if they've been good mothers. So don't. What use is happiness when people who are as close to you are suffering like your mothers? So don't be bound by happiness, but develop selflessness, develop altruism, and let go of pleasures and let go of happiness, really. And that's also very Stoic too. That idea of maintaining your, not necessarily your dignity, but maintaining that everything in this life, nothing bad will come to you, but you shouldn't necessarily become too, oh, I'm happy now, and you shouldn't be placated by that. All suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And this is actually one of the most important things that we can recall about Bodhisattvas, is that it's not necessarily that they suffer just like us, but they're willing to exchange your suffering for their happiness. And that's what keeps them here, clinging to this worldly existence of life. This next chapter is entitled 7 Transforming Trouble. Saying 12. Even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And actually, this is a very Christian saying. And it's sort of like the idea of, if someone hits you, just turn the other cheek. And I know in the modern age people say, well, you wouldn't do that, but it's more. I think it's greater than that image alone. It's more. Don't react, because that will begin a cyclic. What's the word? It will begin a terrible cycle of anger, of hatred, and of terrible overreactions that will just mount and mount and mount. And if you know anything about the Hatfields and McCoys, it's sort of like that. You'll just become feuding, and eventually you'll realize that there's no reason that you were feuding. and that's just really a symbol for something pretty grand. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, out of compassion, take all his misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And this goes along with the first, so I think I'll just continue. Even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, in return, with a loving mind, speak of his good qualities. And actually, this is also very Stoic as well, because Marcus Aurelius spoke about, when you wake up in the morning, think to or say to yourself, the people I meet today will be angry, they'll be hasty, they'll just be mean to me. But understand that this man is of the same nature that I am. And I cannot hate my brother, I cannot hate my sister, and so understand that we are all from the same mind. And I think this is exactly what this practice of Bodhisattvas is talking about. Though someone may deride and speak bad words about you in a public gathering, look on him as a spiritual teacher. Bow to him with respect. And this goes along again with transforming trouble and taking anger and suffering and transforming it into compassion. Now, in our modern age, there are probably a few people who do this pretty well, but we always look upon them as being strange and having different sort of values, and we deride that. 16. Even if a person for whom you've cared like your own child regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially, like a mother does her child who is stricken by sickness. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So even if someone should hate you, always care for them. 17. If an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place him as you would your spiritual teacher with respect on the crown of your head. That's pretty straightforward. Again, turning trouble into kindness. 18. Though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, afflicted by your dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement, take on the misdeeds and pain of all living beings. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Again, fairly straightforward. 19. Though you become famous and many bow to you, you gain riches, and you gain riches equal to Vaishravanas. See that See that worldly fortune is without essence, and be unconceited. This is also very Stoic as well, because the Stoics would say, and I believe Marcus Aurelius even said this, that if someone should praise you, turn away from that praise, so that you do not stray from your path. 20. While the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Again, very stoic, because it talks about transforming the mind away from evil and of suffering. 21. Sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. This is another one concerning desire and detachment. But it's also very applicable to the theme of transforming trouble. Okay, the next chapter is entitled Dreams and Rainbows. So let's begin. 22. Whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent science of subject and object. At the beginning of time in the Buddhist philosophy, we all have the same mind of the Buddhas. And then something happened. And I figured out an image for this. Essentially, think of a lake, and someone, somewhere, a long time ago, took a log and just threw it into the water. And all the drops of water that would throw up into the air, those drops are like our minds. And eventually we will all come back down and hit the lake again. But of course we won't do that anytime soon. But this is what I think is beginning this passage. And then when we understand that our minds were originally that of Buddhas, then we can begin to understand that perception and the feelings that we have can vary and change our point of view often. Perception is also a very important aspect of Buddhism. In fact, if you've ever heard the Heart Sutra, and this perhaps my favorite lines, there is no form, or form is emptiness, emptiness in form. And I think that shows fairly well the idea of Buddhist perception. 23. When you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And again, this is fairly straightforward. All forms of suffering are like a child's death in a dream. Holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. Therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. In the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius also speaks somewhat about this, and he said, whenever something bad happens to you, realize that it will never be bad because it's nature. Nature wouldn't do bad things to you. Nature just does things that would change you, and change isn't bad. And I think it's very, very true. Chapter 9, Training and Serving. 25. When those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there is no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And I think that's fairly straightforward. always care for others, always give what you can, even if it means giving your body. There's actually a story about this, about the king who gave his own head so that someone can go back and give it to his enemies. That was my summary of that story. 26. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being, so wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your ethical discipline. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So always, don't just follow ethics, but discover your own ethics. And each culture has a different set of values and a different set of beliefs. And that's good and all, but personally I think you should find your own. And that's sort of what we've been doing in the state of Sandus. We've found our own values, we've found our own beliefs, and I think that we have benefited from that. 27. To bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm them are like a precious jewel. Therefore, towards all cultivate patience without hostility. That's actually something that I should learn to follow. There's someone in a class of mine who I become very impatient about, but this passage is very correct. You should cultivate patience without hostility. It's just goodwill. And it's virtuous. 28. Seeing even hearers and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own good, strive as if to put out a fire on their head. For the sake of all beings, make enthusiastic effort the source of all good qualities. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Try to save those, and I don't know. Make enthusiastic effort to go towards that fire of those realizers, and to not necessarily it says put out a fire on their head, but devote yourself to them. Is one way I read it. 29. Understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding. Cultivate concentration which surpasses the formless absorptions. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So, all the disturbing emotions that we feel, anger, sadness, hatred, etc., they are destroyed with calm. And so if we remain calm and cultivate concentration, then we can destroy those emotions. Let me actually do some research for formless absorptions. Here we go. The four formless absorptions are infinite space, in the formless realm. They are infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothing whatsoever, neither existence nor non-existence. And the three realms The three realms are the desire realm, the four realm, and the formless realm, all within the domain of samsara. The desire realm is the first of the three realms. Beings inhabiting it are prey to intense emotion and crave happiness based on the pleasures of senses. The desire realm consists of 36 abodes, where the 6 classes of beings live. And the 6 classes of beings are hell beings, or demons, hungry ghosts, animals, human beings, demigods, or also known as heroes, like Greek heroes, and then gods. So all classes of those beings live on the desire realm. The form realm is the second of the three realms, and only populated by gods, divided into 17 heavens. The cause for being reborn in one of these heavens is the favorable karma accumulated through the practice of 1 or 4 dhyanas. So, form realm existing gods, and then the formless realm is gods only, and they have no form. Fun fact. Going back to this, the 4 formless absorptions are the highest. It says here, cultivate concentration, which surpasses the 4 formless absorptions. So go beyond this 3 realms and try to attain nirvana by concentration. 30. Since the 5 perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with the skillful means, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the 3 spheres as real. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Let's see. 5. Before I make commentary, I just want to make sure that I'm correct. The 5 perfections are the perfect teacher, the perfect teaching, the perfect place, the perfect disciples, and perfect time. And they derive from the Buddha Shakyamuni, or Siddhartha Gautama, and they are the various moments and geographical locations in which he expounded the Dharma to his disciples. So these 5 perfections have to be certain for attaining nirvana. And according to this, you cannot attain nirvana just with these 5 perfections. You also need wisdom in order to attain enlightenment. But along with these, with skillful means, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the 3 spheres as real. Let me see what the 3 spheres are. The 3 spheres. The 3 spheres are subject, object, and action. And so if you do not see those 3 spheres as being real, then you have cultivated wisdom, which has gone beyond, which has united the 5 perfections, and therefore you have attained enlightenment. Chapter 10, Beware. 31. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner, but not practice one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. And this is also a lot to do with ego. Pardon me. There we go. This has a lot to do with ego, because we will not examine our own errors because we don't want to admit them. But if we admit our errors, then we can work towards them, towards ending them. So you may even look like a practitioner or as a monk without examining your own errors. But if you examine your own errors and rid yourself of them, then that is what bodhisattvas do. 32. If through the influence of disturbing emotions you point out the faults of another bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of others, of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. The great vehicle, also known as Mahayana, is the aspiration to attain Buddhahood. Is the only means to help beings find liberation from suffering. This aspiration is called bodhicitta, the heart of the enlightened mind, and is realized on both an absolute and relative level. Wow, I'm learning so much. Let me see. So do not point out the faults of others fairly much. Do not point out the faults of others, otherwise you are diminished yourself, and yeah, that's fairly it. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle, or bodhicitta, which is loving kindness and the heart of enlightened mind. In fact, I'll even look here to define it. Let's see. Bodhicitta is the compassionate wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, often exemplified by Shenrezig Buddha. Let's see. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel and make hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And I think that's fairly straightforward because it's all said in the beginning sentence. I mean, you're given instructions in the sentence right before, the line right before, this is the practice of bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel. What that means is that we begin to desire them, and that makes us quarrel for them. Therefore, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors, people who will always give you respect and rewards. 34. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deteriorations in a bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words, which are unpleasant to others. So, this is actually very important for me too, because I'm sarcastic, and people, I say plenty of harsh words to others, even if I don't necessarily mean them. So essentially, give up all words that will hurt others, because this deteriorates your practice as bodhisattva. 35. Habitual disturbing emotions are hard to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once, as soon as they arise. So always be alert, and aware, and I see. Just as you would destroy attachment, destroy disturbing emotions like sadness, anger, fear, etc. 36, and we're almost done. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So, in sum, no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're following all of these practices, always ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? And with that constant mindfulness and concentration, you should use that to help others. Conclusion. 37. which is rather long, yet rather long. And afterwards we will read the dedication. Just a moment. Let's see. Okay. 37. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Remove the suffering by removing the suffering of all sentient beings, all people, etc., and understanding the purity of the three spheres, that is, of object. Let me see. Three spheres. Yeah, three spheres: subject, object, and action. Dedicate the virtue you make from the effort of removing the suffering of others. Dedicate that virtue to enlightenment. For all, and I won't provide commentary for this. For all who want to train on the Bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones on the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I've relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent, so I think these Bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of Bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Shinrezig, the Buddha of compassion, who dwells in neither extreme, not in the world, nor in peace. This was written for his own and others' benefit by the monk Togmay, an exponent of scripture and reasoning, in a cave in Nyokchu Rinchen, which is, let's see, an area of the Nyokchu Cho zone, the place where Togmay Sangpo practiced and taught in the She Valley, which is a western tributary of the Rongchu. And here's the dedication. May any merit that results from this work act as a cause for the Buddha's teaching to remain a living source of spiritual nourishment, and for those who embody, hold, and transmit it to enjoy long and fruitful lives. Thank you, and for the most part this concludes the Losar celebrations for the state of Sandus. Of course, I personally will continue, and I recommend that you do so. Continue to meditate, and if you want to look at more sutras, there are plenty available on the internet. But otherwise, just sit in meditation, pray, consider others and their suffering, and also think about the suffering that we have, even if we cannot see it. So, from now until this evening, I hope that we will at least be mindful of that, and that we can all come to the realization of enlightenment and of suffering. Thank you, and have a good evening, and happy Losar. Losar Tashi Delek.